So what's up, guys? So I don't normally watch a lot of TV at home, and my parents have actually added a new dynamic because the TV and my computer are like located in very close proximity. So anyway, my parents are watching this this TV show. It's a police officer show, and this one scene, it's a police officer, like a patrol officer, and a detective, plainclothes detective. So in this scene, this show, the officers are like in this like courtyard. I don't know if it's at a police station or something.
It's cordoned off or something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously the police have control of whatever this area is because this guy's giving commands to people around him. So anyway, this car comes like careening into this cordoned off area. Like out of control, and so the police officers directing people to get behind something while he figures out what's going on. So the car pulls up, and it's this black guy, and he's wearing a hoodie, and the door pops open.
So it's not the Duke boys.
No,
Damn,
no.
I thought we were going.
Yeah, no. So the police officers got his firearm drawn, which I understand that because he's trying to figure out what's going on.
It's a gong show.
It is.
So he's yelling commands to this dude who's in this driver's seat, and the driver is now turned towards his passenger seat, and he's trying to get something that's there. Well, the moment he turns the driver turns his attention away from the officer probably thinks that this guy's freaking ignoring him.
Well, did he ever make facial contact or recognition?
No,
they never met eyes.
There's no acknowledgement of any kind.
Okay, gotcha.
So he probably doesn't even know. He's acting like the cop's not even there.
That I couldn't tell you, because the camera's coming from the police.
Sure.
Okay.
So it's a point of view.
The policeman is
Yeah.
yelling commands, wondering why this dude
So it's
won't
a point of
fucking
view
respond.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the the driver is fumbling for something in the driver's seat. The policeman assumes the worst, and he's like, "Don't do it! Don't do it!" And so now now the firearm comes up, and he's got it pointed at the dude. And now this detective that's with him sort of comes into the scene, and I guess he's changing his view to see what this guy is doing.
So the detective has a different angle than the police officer. The uniform does.
And how I interpreted that is, he had a different angle, but detectives also have a different mindset too. So and that's how I kind of, maybe I'm going to validate what I'm going to say about this. So I guess when the driver finally gets whatever he wants in the driver or in the passenger seat, he turns towards the police officer. Well, the police officer still isn't altogether sure what that item is that he was grabbing.
Right.
And just as he pulls the trigger, the detective pushes his hands out of the way, sending the bullet ricocheting off somewhere else. So when there was a brief exchange between the detective and the officer, and they go to figure out what's going on with this guy, and the detective, I guess, also one of these things who they know what to look for. So he looks around on the dashboard, and then he pulls the visor, and this little sign pops out that says, "I am deaf." And I know what they say because my parents have one of these cards in each. They used to have one in each one of their cars as well. So my dad looks at me after this whole scene unfolds, and he's looking at me like, "What do you think?" And because how I looked at it is, that could very easily, it wouldn't happen to my father, but actually, it could have.
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about from a 70-year-old man doing something like. He's not going to do that, but could somebody in the deaf community very easily get into a situation like that? Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
So, but my perspective was on that deal is my dad asked me what I thought of that situation, and I was like, well, the fucking officer was an idiot because but that's just me only because I have a dynamic that nobody else has.
Right.
And probably my mindset is a little bit different also, because I also know going in that,
Sure. You know, I hear you. It's an interesting story, because I'm looking, as you're telling the story, I'm thinking of why they wrote it that way, why they cast it that way,
sure,
and why they're presenting it that way in a TV show. And it's, you know, these things are written to bring up emotions and play off of fears or whatever it is.
but it's also problem solving.
It is, but it also relates to real world, because I remember back, oh man, this is like 15 years ago. There's an Oriental couple that got lost on the highway in California, and they got off into the Crenshaw district, and they were signing each other.
Yes, I do remember.
And
this.
some gang guys on the corner thought they were from another gang and literally went to the car and shot them up.
Wow.
So I mean, you know, that challenge for people that have a handicap like that has got to be a scary thing. I think that would keep a lot of them as shut-ins. Is why they don't like to go out. So a lot of them would become a shut-in or use transportation.
Well, I think you operate to your ability. I think if you're cognitive enough as a deaf person to know how society works, and you're out in that environment, you're expecting that sort of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Some.
To a degree. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Well, so it does, and
like your dad, for instance, he would not do that. I doubt he would go digging around, crashing into a
when
police
you
scene.
apply what you just said to today's environment, I'd say absolutely yes. Only because police agencies of every Leo has some sort of an outreach program with the deaf.
Yeah.
Because my parents just attended one not too long ago. I guess it's to become familiar with the tactics that they may use if they have it.
Well, not only that, the police can learn from them. I would think of, hey, how are these people going to react in this environment? They get an idea. You know what I'm saying? So some of the one of the parts of the puzzle that we're missing here is what led up to these events. Why did the guy careen into this site? See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's a big missing portion of the...
And that's very typical of TV shows.
When they want to invoke the emotional response, they leave a lot of stuff out.
Because when I heard the story, I'm thinking of Trayvon Martin.
Yeah, that's exactly.
In a hoodie in a car, and here's an angry white cop, and I'm going, okay,
no. So just so you know, both the detective and the officer with the drawn weapon were both black.
Oh, okay.
And the driver was black also.
Okay.
So, but the thing is,
I don't think that matters. To me, it's cops versus everybody else. That's the mentality. I don't think the color of the officer matters.
Yeah, anymore. I mean, there's a lot to the story. When a guy comes driving up, I mean, you being a guy that's been in Afghanistan, okay,
right.
So. Somebody driving up in a car.
Now,
there's some suspension of belief here.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you what. Now, driving crazy to an ECP.
Yeah.
You're going to get dead real fast.
Yeah, exactly.
No questions will be asked. No commands will be given.
It's not going to be the U.S. soldier. I can tell you right now, is not going to be the first one that fires that weapon.
Right.
It's going to be the Afghan nationals who work on base,
right?
Because they're our first line of defense. They're contracted with our agencies there. They're going to get the first fire. They're going to get the first trigger pull.
So bringing this up brings up an interesting discussion that I had online with a good friend, a mutual friend of ours. I'm not going to say his name, but we had a great discussion on Facebook about this, and it was over the gentleman in Florida that shot the guy that shoved him to the ground.
Oh, yeah.
This was a great... we had a great discussion about this.
Right.
And we both came to the conclusion, almost at the same time, that all the actors involved in this operated on emotion and didn't think the situation through. So if you look at it, what happened, I'll briefly cover for those not familiar. You had a female that was parked in a handicapped parking space. You had an older gentleman that approached that car and was explaining to her that she didn't need to be parked there because she didn't have the tag, she didn't have the proper windshield hanger and all that stuff. She didn't have the proper equipment to be parked there. The third actor in this is inside the store,
the husband,
while this is taking place. So how this goes down is the gentleman has approached the car from the outside. It's none of his business. So he's inserted himself. Now this guy that's doing the talking,
he created the situation.
He did. He's a CHL holder, but This is where all the actors are bad. He's a CHL holder. So the first thing that he did wrong was keep communicating when it was obviously not going to go anywhere. You see what I'm saying?
Escalating.
If you can't discuss things rationally with somebody in public and they start screaming and yelling, just leave.
Yeah, leave.
Extricate yourself and leave the scene.
Right.
If you feel the need to be proactive, write the license plates down and call the cops later.
I agree with that. Okay.
Yeah, same
No
here.
problem. I mean, if you feel that strongly, like you have to do something, then do that. You said your piece, move along. So the gentleman with the CHL is continuing to argue with the female in the car. The husband, who's inside the store, this is a convenience store, a C store,
And they're
he comes
loud.
out.
I know that they're loud enough because the people
People are stopping, yes.
because they can
you
hear
see
it.
people looking. It's obviously a loud confrontation. So this guy's yelling at this female. But stupid, you're dumb for doing that. In the wrong. You've instigated this from the start. Now, her husband, who's in the store, comes out, sees what's going on, broadsides the guy and shoves him to the ground. Full force. Big
Right.
dude. And he's a much bigger guy than the guy that he shoved to the ground. Now, this is where the conversation got interesting. Is it came up at what would you do if you walked out of a store and just saw your wife arguing with a guy that's very obviously very loud and going on. This is where you can't let emotion take over. This guy's emotions took over and he put his hands on him. He shouldn't have done that. He shoved the guy down hard enough and had him on the ground and was still threatening him to where the state determined that constituted lethal or bodily harm.
Sure.
That's the criteria that had to be met.
Right.
That's what. That's Florida's interpretation of that.
But
The criteria was met, obviously.
But
Otherwise, we'd have a case going.
But there's a backstory to that guy that
Which one?
actually drew the gun.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he
has a
He's
history of
caused
doing
problems
this.
before.
Yeah, he's caused problems before. So you got to know that his mindset is of that.
It is.
If he wasn't carrying, would he be such a loudmouth?
I agree. But all three actors, it's still you still have equal share of
Oh, I agree.
of
The
the
dynamics
actors all being wrong.
Yeah.
The thing I look at it is everybody needs to look at this and take note. I mean, if you can draw anything out of a tragedy, try to learn from what went wrong in that tragedy.
Right.
You know what I mean? So he shoves him to the ground. Obviously, the state saw it as potential lethal force because
Sure.
the guy stood over him and he shot him, killed him. Didn't kill him outright, but it killed him.
Yeah, because the problem I have is when the moment the guy runs over, hits the guy with the gun,
Right.
okay, knocks him to the ground. There's this moment where, and this is just bad video,
Yeah.
because the whole thing was like distorted and blurred.
Right.
So at some point he backs away.
No, he stands on the curb. He takes a step back, but he's still talking to the guy, telling him he's going to bash
He
his
gets
head
shot a couple times. He hit him. He hit him in the gut and
Yeah.
center mass.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so Chief called me up the day that this shit happened.
Right.
And so he is a Leo, or was a Leo.
Right.
And from his perspective, and he worked in some shitty fucking neighborhoods
Right.
here in Houston. And he's like, I worked in some of the worst neighborhoods in Houston, and I still wouldn't have done what this fucker
Well,
did.
that's a lot of us
So
wouldn't
he
have.
called it
Yeah.
turd on turd.
That's probably
And
good.
that's- and
That
that's
is
fair.
a good.
That's
I think
fair.
that's a fair
And
analogy.
his agreement, he did not agree with the application of the stand your ground.
Yeah.
Because
Well-
he was like, that is, in his opinion,
Yeah.
which is, and it's all going to be the court of public opinion.
Sure.
Is he thought that was the incorrect application
If the
for
guy-
that, which
if-
I agree.
If the guy pushed him and then went back towards his wife, that's one thing.
Yeah.
He stood over him. You got to understand that it shifted the minute he didn't retreat, because you could have made the case in court that he was protecting his wife.
Right.
He pushed the guy away from his wife because he didn't know the situation. He pushed her away from his wife,
Right.
retreated to get into the vehicle and leave with his wife or check on her safety.
So I watched,
He didn't do that.
but I watched the video too.
Yeah.
And how I watched the body language, I saw it hit, and in my eyes, he slightly moved away. Maybe because the gun got drawn.
Oh,
Yeah,
I don't know.
the
But the
Yeah.
thing is I still think that somebody charged you without a weapon, and this is just my mindset. I got pushed to the ground. Does that warrant pulling a weapon? In my mind, no.
Okay. The guy's bigger than you, and he's standing over you, and you're old. I don't care what you've done in the past. The guy can be an asshole.
But the attack is not continuing. That's my issue.
Well, you don't know that.
You don't, and that's my point. So did the guy shove him down out of a bravado, or did he shove him down because he felt like there was actual threat? If that's my loved one and I shove you to the ground, I'm following you to the ground and I'm going to stop you. You will either I'm going to try to make you unconscious or subdued.
So you're listening to the argument, okay? You walk out the door and you hear loud argument going on. You see a guy verbally attacking your wife, okay?
I get that.
Well, let me go through this. You go towards the guy, okay? The guy now focuses his wrath on you.
Right.
You make the move, you knock him to the ground. The guy's still talking shit going down. There's no way he's not talking shit going to the ground.
He was running his mouth all the time.
Okay, so he's running his mouth. He should have recognized. That this was an unstable person. Now, we are armchair quarterbacking the shit out of this, and I get it. But you have to go back to why they did what they did in the courtroom. When that guy moved forward and did not retreat, right or wrong, that guy on the ground was weak and defenseless in the eyes of the court. How they got there is the problem. Okay, how they got to that situation.
By all three actors.
Yeah,
all three actors.
Yeah, because she could have just sat in a car and honked the horn.
But fucking backed
or
up
she
and
could have
left, back the hell up,
and moved to the other side of the parking lot.
Yes.
Now, if the guy pursued her around the parking lot, whole different story.
Oh yeah, he's going to prison.
He's going to prison.
And so my my judgment of this whole thing is based on pure video, not the emotion or not.
Well, that's all any of us have.
Exchange.
But it is emotional. Think about how it happened. It all happened out of emotion.
But
the video proves that.
But my judgment, my opinion, is based on what I watched, not anything. He got knocked down, and it
was violent.
Well, I saw the video too.
Right.
But my threshold for drawing a weapon is different than this guy's, obviously, because I have a toolbox of different tools that I apply. But if the only thing I have in my toolbox is a hammer, then stop calling it a fucking toolbox. It's a holster, and that's it.
Okay, I understand your passion, okay, and I understand how you would respond to it. But you're talking about a guy that has been known to be unstable.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Whether that guy was unstable or not doesn't deny the fact that the bigger guy inserted himself in
a dominant fashion.
A dominant fashion.
He was
basically violent to him.
Filoni is violence.
Right.
So,
how many times have you seen the loudmouth asshole sit there and chatter at somebody until that guy snaps and kicks his ass?
Yes.
And then the other guy is the one that's going to go to jail.
Yeah.
That's where you have to just learn to ignore that shit. Walk away, because I don't disagree with what the court did or didn't do.
My point is, use this as a learning tool.
Sure.
Always keep your head in these situations. Anytime, use that as a last resort, and then when you go to do it, here's what the guy should have done, in my opinion. This is how it should have went down. The guy that shoved him to the ground should have followed him to the ground. This is what I would have wished happened. And he'd have beat that guy's ass on the ground, because that's, in reality, without the court of law or any of that being here, that guy should have beat his ass wholesale on the ground.
Okay, so let's play that scenario out. There was a Hispanic guy that got choked out by a Harris County Sheriff deputy's husband up front of a restaurant.
Yes, I remember
this. So what that started out is the dude was running his mouth.
He was urinating in public. Wasn't that the deal?
He was urinating in public. The guy said something to him about it. The kid ran his mouth, and he choked his ass out.
Yeah.
Okay? So think about that. He grabbed him. He followed him to the ground, and look what the hell happened.
That's true.
Okay.
But we can't look at it as, did that kid... Again, do we have the whole story there? Did the kid go to throw hands first against the off-duty officer, or did he have reason to believe that this kid was fixing to throw hands on this officer?
A series of events came in play that made somebody feel like they had to take action.
Right.
Okay, so what we were talking about earlier about the lady moving the car would be no different than the guy walking with his wife saying, you know what, this guy's drunk, he's pissing on the sidewalk, I'm going to go to the manager. Being a cop, she should have been able to call somebody.
That's true.
And say, hey, we're at this location. There's a guy that's drunk in public urinating.
Right.
So what ends up happening is the dynamic that we're talking about is somebody inserting themselves.
Yes.
Okay? Because you asked the question, what would you do if it was your dad? I think one of y'all did.
Well, that's how we started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have to ask yourself that we're saying, okay, you should have done this, you should have done that. You are more in control of yourself
Yes.
and what's going on than what's going on around you.
Right.
So what you need to do is recognize the fact that, oh shit, this is a danger zone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in condition orange or red or whatever it's going to be, and I'm going to move.
Yep.
Now, where it changes is when that person pursues you. So if that person decides not to break engagement, then it's all bets off, and then I am taking you to the ground. Because now I can prove that I have broke contact. This person pursued me. You have to remember, they changed the law years ago when it come to deadly force in the state of Texas. It used to be a person would attack you, and that's assault.
Yes.
That didn't give you the right to exert deadly force. You had to try to get away. When they attempted to get you the second time, then you can use lethal force. Well, they changed that. If you feel you're in reasonable danger now,
right,
you can exert whatever force necessary to protect yourself.
That's true.
So that should tell you that when somebody's talking shit to you, just walk away.
Right.
The only difference between the two, and this just hit me as we were talking about this, the only difference between the two that I can see would be the gentleman in Florida, it was defense of a third person.
Right.
Whereas the officer with the kid, that was mano y mano.
Sure.
There was no other person around. He could reasonably say I was trying to defend my wife because she was sitting in a car.
Sure.
The engine could have been off, whatever.
Well, the other guy could have said
that's reasonable.
The other guy could have said, "Well, he was exposing himself in front of my wife and kids." So
but they can move. You see what I'm saying?
I understand that. To me, they're very close.
They are. It is very. It's a thin. We're talking about a razor blade here.
If the guy had taken a step back, okay, and moved towards his wife, this would have changed the whole thing.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It would have been an entirely different situation. Going back to the story earlier about the guy in the car, the one thing I found about people that are handicapped is that they are very cognizant and overcompensate so that what is going on with them.
That was my point that I was driving.
They tend to do that. So I felt like the TV show was trying to set a frame of an officer in this perspective, is what I felt. I always feel like, me.
They're trying to put us in a little box.
Yeah, they're trying to. So, I'm always suspect of screenwriters' craft.
One thing that did just sort of occur to me is because of the outreach programs that they have, it's very hard for me to say that they didn't apply. Let's call it a 70s mentality and put it in a 2000 teens mentality.
Yeah, it's almost something like you would see in a Dirty Harry or something like that,
But I mean, it was, but it obviously resonated with my father.
I get it,
and it did exactly what it was written to do. That's exactly how it was written for response. To me, when writers write things like that, they take enough truth of multiple stories and they do a mashup.
Sure.
And then they present this case. Because first of all, when you first described it, I'm thinking Trayvon Martin. Young black guy in a hoodie.
That's the first thing I thought about when I saw the.
Now, you didn't allude to the race of the cops until well after the story turned into a debate.
Again, it was like I never even thought about the race of the cop, because to me it was it's a non-issue.
I agree with you, but the way it was written and how it's interpreted visually, no matter what you're going to say out of your mouth, your eyes always take in things.
Right.
And then your brain collects it and starts categorizing things.
Right.
You start saying, wait a minute, what was this, like Todd asked earlier, what was the situation? Was he delivering a pizza? Was he taking somebody to the hospital because they were shot?
I honestly
couldn't. Or was he lost and he's looking for directions? Well, that's what I'm saying. So what they do is they leave that blank and they allow you to fill in all the blanks. Now, where you're going to go in a situation like that, your greatest fear. That's why they wrote it that way.
Yeah.
They wrote it that way so that you play upon what you most recently saw on the news. Oh, it's a bunch of racist cops. Or, oh, this guy is this. Or, oh, I just got back from Afghanistan and I would have shot the guy. I mean, there's so many things that are playing in the millions of people that watch these shows that the scenarios, and it's always going to be different. And what I think is funny about watching or listening to that story, because I haven't watched that show, is the fact that they went to that type of scene.
That dynamic.
Yeah, that dynamic. I mean, to me, it's like,
Now I will
little
say,
uncomfortable with
from my perspective. Okay, so I had a situation. We were doing a train up before we went to Afghanistan, and one of the range officers came up to me after an exercise and said, "Hey soldier, none of your shots that you hit them, but none of them were kill shots."
Right.
And I said, "I'm intel. I have questions for him." And so he turned around and he goes, "Damn, sir, that's a goddamn good answer." That's why my perspective is what it is. I need to know more, but I also know going that sometimes my delay, which is what it is, because I want to know, can be to my detriment. But every police officer knows that.
I see. Here's the thing, though. I would agree and disagree with that statement in the fact that you would know when you had to go lethal and when you didn't have to go lethal.
Yeah.
That's the question we're asking here. Same thing. If you can't get yourself out of that situation, and it's not like, I mean, if the guy's got you in a chokehold and you draw and you shoot him, you're fighting for your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, number one, it's escalated far beyond where you should have let it go.
If you're trying to now make a standoff with somebody where you push them back or repel the attack, is your tactic still the same?
Right.
So most instructors will tell you when you draw, you shoot to kill because you've reached that limit of that rope.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why you draw is to save your life. And when you are fighting to save your life, you terminate the threat.
Yeah. Well,
Okay. So the civilian world is a little different. The law enforcement world may be more towards what you just described about I have questions for him.
right.
Okay. Because I've noticed in a lot of the shootings we've seen lately, these guys are blowing 20 rounds.
Oh yeah.
It's like
magazine emptying stuff.
Insane. I was watching a video of I don't know if it was a Las Vegas cop, but he was shooting through his windshield as he was driving.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I did
That
see
was
that.
holy crap.
Yeah.
I mean,
rounds
he's going
all over the street.
He's going down a neighborhood,
Right.
throwing rounds everywhere, and I'm like, wait a minute. What about the story about the little girl sitting in her bedroom playing with her dolls and she gets killed?
Yeah.
Okay, this is where you have to use your brain. You can't outrun a two-way radio.
Right.
They get
You're not
helicopters.
that's what I was gonna say. You can't outrun the chopper.
Yeah, they get choppers in that sky soon enough. We don't need this kind of thing going on. So it comes down to the mindset and personal control. The ability to actually, what you want is somebody that can compartmentalize this.
Quickly.
You don't want somebody that can respond emotionally to it. This is where I get off. This is where I'm going to go on a rant about firearms trainers that teach you to do bad things to bad people. That's the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever heard in my life. Unless you're a cop or you're an assaulter,
Right.
or you're in the military, that's fine.
No, if you're in a movie and you make some stupid statement like that, you don't do that. And draw a paycheck for it.
Yeah,
No.
you're the disease and I'm the cure. This is what this dude reminds me of. And so I get so tired of instructors that take a civilian and put them in that situation. Because I'll be honest with you,
you're training them for failure. That's all.
that's all you're doing. Is you might as well just become an attorney and just follow them down the street because here's what's going to happen.
Right.
And that's where we get in trouble with society today. We sit back and jest and we joke about it. Oh, it blew his brains out. Would you? Because you and I had this conversation many a times.
Yeah. No.
And honestly, the responsibility that you have given the right to protect yourself is that. It is a responsibility. Okay? And you have to stand back and you have to tell yourself, wait a minute, is this worth killing somebody?
Right.
Now, the only time I'm going to draw is if I know I'm in imminent danger. That's just the way it's going to be. But when I draw, you're going to get shot.
I'm going to draw because I have ceased to have any more questions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The questions are done.